Hi, everyone. It's Rachel Allard from Union Street Media back again with another installment of our Female Founder series. Today, I'm really excited to have a guest with a pretty broad background and lots of different experience. I'm here with Stephanie Lanier, who is currently a team leader, but a former broker owner and founder of her own company, as well as founder of the Inspiration Lab. So, thank you for being here, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, and I know you're going to have a ton of good insight and wisdom to share with our audience today, I'd love for you just to give us, the 30,000-foot view. How did you get to where you are today, and how did you get into real estate?
Yes, well, it's funny. I always feel like I say this to audiences when you ask like kids, who are they dressing up as for Halloween? Like no one says a real estate agent, right? I mean, have you ever seen a little kid as a realtor? No. Um, and maybe like somebody listening is like, yes, my child wants to do that. But no, I think it's one of those things that so many people we find ourselves, we fall into it, or doors open, or we have some interest, or a lot of people have family members who are involved. So my story is kind of a combination of both. My husband got a real estate license to help his brother purchase some investment properties. So I'd been around it a little bit, but my background is in social work. I have a master's degree in social work, and that was my first career. And when our son Oliver got sick with a rare genetic disorder and lots of special needs that he has, we were getting crazy medical bills. So I was a stay-at-home mom. This was in 2010. Um, Obviously real estate was in a tough spot too. My husband works in the film industry. That's very up and down in North Carolina, depending on who's in office. We have incentives that come and go. So we were just in a tough spot. And he had always said, you'll be a great real estate agent. And I was a little offended because I was like, I'm Mother Teresa. I don't do sales. You know what I mean? Um, but obviously he was seeing something that clearly made sense for me. So I took the real estate class and I thought, okay, if I can just do like 10 deals a year, it will help with Oliver's medical bills. I'll still be able to use a lot of my social work skills, helping people and all of that. I think I had no idea how much I would use those. Um, and I thought it'll let me be flexible. If he has a doctor's appointment, he needs me, I can sort of be around. And so I took the class and I fell in love with the industry, with the people. It felt right. Social work I thought felt right, but then when I got into real estate, I was like, "Ooh, this clicks for me. I love this industry, and I love that you can never get bored with it. Like you will not get bored with real estate. You might burn out, which we'll talk about later, right? But getting bored is never going to happen. And so that's how real estate started for me. And I remember the first year I got licensed in March and my goal was to sell 10 houses and I only sold 9. And I was like so frustrated with myself. And now looking back, I'm like, that's a miracle. Like it is so hard to get started in real estate. We didn't have a team, I wasn't getting leads from anywhere. So I sort of from the ground up had to build something. And it's been a great industry ever since.
That's an awesome story, and I love how you started it. My daughter wants to be a cat, so maybe I'll try to get her to be a real estate agent.
Yeah, but like seriously, like yeah, there's no kid who's like walking around with a for sale. Maybe there might be two in America, but it's a funny industry when you find yourself in it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so I'm curious. So you mentioned 10 was sort of your number that first year. And, without getting into too much detail, unless you want to, how did you come up with that? Like, how did you even set that first goal was it like purely financial, or had you talked to anyone, or kind of where did it
It,
come from?
it sounded like 10 sounded like a round number, and it was in March, so I thought like, that there were 9 months left, so like one a month ish. I just sort of like, and it sounded so doable. I thought like, oh, I'll blow that out of the water. Like it's so hard to start in real estate. And Wilmington, where I live, Wilmington, North Carolina, it's a small southern town. If you've lived in the South, you understand this. In most southern cities, 4 to 10 families own most of the undeveloped land. It's very driven by relationships, by who knows who, by things that you just, if you're new to the area or new to the business world, just don't know. And you have to learn these things. And it's building relationships, being patient, um, doing work with integrity so people want to trust you and bring you into their circle. That stuff just takes time. And I think I didn't quite realize all of those pieces. And of course, that's all come together over time. But I experimented with like I remember I bought leads with Trulia in our beach town, like Wrightsville Beach, because it has the highest priced properties. And I thought this makes sense. And for the first 6 months, I just got all these calls about rentals. Like I didn't even understand like online leads. Like everything was just so new to me. And because we started a boutique brokerage right out of the gate. So I was only at another brokerage. It was a discount, kind of pay $500 before when you sell a house for 3 months. And then Andrew and I, my husband and I started a boutique brokerage. And the reason we could do that is because he had enough qualifications in our state to be the broker in charge. But it's crazy that I like started and was on an island from the get-go. So like, I didn't have a Better Homes and Gardens or a Prudential or a Century 21 or any of those people kind of behind me telling me like, hey, you're a new agent. If you call this many people, you'll get this many deals. Like I just was kind of doing things on my own, but I found the entire boutique independent brokerage world. So those kind of became my people. I traveled to a conference that Christina Wise had called Reinvention back in the day. Like that was kind of where all these people who are starting boutique brokerages were hanging out, and they just took me under their wing. And that's when I think my goals and plans got more realistic. Like I started getting like professional help and not just throwing things up on the wall. But I think a lot of new agents do that. They pick a number because you have to start somewhere. You need a target, and then you just have to adjust, because it's like if you do 10 multi-million dollar deals, that's equivalent to like 30, lower, like it's almost arbitrary. Like number of deals can be kind of maybe not the very best goal for a lot of people, but at least for me. And I just look back and I want to go like hug myself and be like, you did so great, you know?
I love it. You're answering all my questions for me. I mean, to what do you attribute your success? Like you've talked about having that peer network, also, starting somewhere. I mean, and you sold 9 homes that first year. So you almost, you're saying set realistic goals, but really the goal you set, you actually did almost achieve. So there's also sort of that, I think, grit that I'm hearing and just, doing what it takes. So many things in there. I'm curious now. I mean, there are so many Stephanie Laniers out there right now, or maybe not so many, but people who are thinking about making moves, or maybe life has put them in a situation where they need another source of income, or they need to do something else. So what would you say to all of them out there right now, if you could sort of fast track, or if they could learn from your experience?
Well, I have to say the funny thing is there are other Stephanie Laniers out there, and there's one that looks a lot like me in Georgia who had a DUI, and I'm not joking. This is like personal branding. Like I teach a personal branding course because part of what I had to do is figure out how to not have her picture pop up when people Googled me. Seriously, if you have a somewhat common name, this is actually a problem in real estate. So there are other Stephanie Laniers. I hope she's got her life together. She made a bad choice, but we look similar, and it just would pop up like a mug shot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've got to bury the lead. Like I've got to have enough press, media, speak at a conference, write a blog post, something to get this thing to go. And now it's gone. But what advice would I give to people? I think for me, what I love about real estate is there isn't a boss to run things through. Like if you want to spend money on a workshop, a conference, you can. One of the first things I did, so I had been a realtor in March, and in October, I got on an airplane and I flew to that conference I told you about in Austin, Texas. Those agents that I was meeting, they had teams that did like 1,000 deals. I mean, they were just like, they had brokerages with 4 offices and stuff. I mean, I'm just over there just like truly beyond a rookie, but they were so kind to me and I learned so much. And I think if I'd been waiting for permission or been like, oh, I don't know anyone, or I don't know what to do, it was like, I just was like, hey, all these smart people are getting together. I can afford this. I've saved this money. I'm going to get on a plane and see what happens. I think that sort of boldness is really important in real estate because realtors by and large are very open. I also called all the top realtors around the state and said, hey, could I shadow you for the day? And almost all of them said yes, or eventually would say yes, or it didn't work out that we could meet. But people were like, sure. I mean, once you say like, hey, I'm a baby realtor, I have a sick kid, I'm trying to make money, I don't know what I'm doing because I was a social worker, would you please help me? I will be quiet and I'll follow you around. And so I got to spend a day with Katie Redhead in Greensboro, and she's like the top agent there. And it was so much fun. It was so encouraging. And it wasn't like she was telling me her secrets. She didn't care. We were in different markets. And I think she was really encouraged that I was interested in the work that she was doing and that she could mentor me. So I think sometimes we're waiting for permission or a door to open. And I'm like, no, you need to build the door. You got to build the table you want to seat at. Like in many ways, real estate is very much about creating the thing you wish existed instead of waiting it for it to happen to you. It's almost like people like being like, oh, I want to wait to be discovered. Like, no, that probably won't happen for most people. Like raise your hand, get out there. And so I think that really, really served me well. And I think, frankly, I mean, our son Oliver has had so many really serious times in the hospital where his life has sort of been hanging in the balance. And I have perspective. Like if a business idea doesn't work, or I don't sell a house, or I don't get a listing, like no one died. Like seriously, that's where my brain goes. And because I have this really hard thing in my life that always gives me perspective, it helps me be, I think, a little bit more brave and bold in business. Like I want my business to be successful. But if it wasn't, if something happened, something really bad happened, like I would still be okay. And I think we in real estate have to remember that because we can get our identity so tied up in our quote unquote success. And it's like, and also when we compare markets, it's like somebody selling in a small town in Texas versus a New York City agent. It's almost not even worth talking about the numbers because they're irrelevant, you know? And I think we do that so much to ourselves. Like we feel like we're having a great year. And then it's like we hear about a friend who did X volume or something. And it's like I have friends who are in Orange County, California, and like the average deal over there is like $2 or $3 million. Like that's just like a different planet for me as far as I'm concerned, you know? So I think that the comparison trap when you're new and when you're seasoned is just very tricky. And really trying to figure out like maybe the best goal you could set for yourself, like I live at the beach, is like I want to go on the beach, a sunrise walk at the beach every week, once a week. And if I do that 52 times this year, that's winning for me. And I can't compare that to anyone else's goal. But like having goals that are self-care oriented and oriented around opportunities to be creative and to be a person that's somewhat imbalanced. I mean, I think I have more respect now being in the industry this long for people who are able to do that than somebody who's like, I was grinding out and I did 1,000 deals. And it's like, yeah, but you're sick and your marriage is on the fritz and you haven't seen your kids and your hair is falling out. Like, is it worth it? No, you know?
Yeah. Well, I love that perspective taking and perspective setting. And I think, a lot of people have talked about, I've heard people talk about that one number as being your goal, and whether it's the number of walks on the beach, number of books you can read in a year, retirement age, and amount of time you can spend with your kids. So I love that. I'm curious, sort of jumping ahead. I mean, I want to talk about how this year has been for you because it's been certainly a year that not many of us, if any of us, could have predicted. But do you have specific goals now or kind of things you're looking at in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe with Inspiration Lab or your business that you're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the things I'm always saying with the Inspiration Lab, and it's true, is that, we design goals so that we can crush them, not so they can crush us.
Mm.
It's so important, right? Like we always teach our Inspiration Lab members, the women that are our members, like we want to wrap our goals in grace. Like this hustle culture has gotten out of control. It's not healthy. It's clearly not healthy in COVID. I mean, I think this has kind of been an aha moment for people, you know, pushing yourself to your boundaries and passing them is a really cool experience from time to time. And we've all had to do it or we get to do it. But living in that place constantly, we know is not physically good for your body. Like there's tons of research around this now, right? So so for me, the goals that I'm setting, it's always fun. I don't have a 5 or 10 year goal. Like I try to hold things, especially with COVID, very loosely. I mean, because it just feels like the best analogy I know is like if you've ever been at a wedding and like they're playing like a hip hop song and so you got the beat and you're like doing the dance and then like it's a bad DJ and so they switch to like I don't know like disco and so you're like okay, so now you're getting that groove going and then like all of a sudden you're doing like Texas two step and you're like what is happening? That's what this year has been. Like I get in a groove and it's like whoop, changing stations. Here we go. And so I think that ability to be resilient and to pivot and just be like okay, well we thought we were going in this direction and now we're going a different is important. So like my goals have been really interesting. Like I want to be a great friend and celebrate people's birthdays this quarter. So like last quarter, my Q3 goal was to love the people that I love really well and make sure that their birthdays, the every birthday that happened in that 90-day period were really awesome. Like focused on things that felt in my control. They're still going to have a birthday and I can make it great. How many sales I'm going to have or how many listing appointments I'm going to have or the interest rates and how that's going to affect the markets is a harder thing to control. We have targets for our business and goals. But I'm just not going to like die on the hill of goals. Do you know what I mean? It's like they just are fluid and especially for my team. So my team of agents, everyone is a working mom. And so of our team, 4 out of the 5 of us who are agents, and then we have admin folks too, but 4 out of the 5 of us have school age kids and we're just barely hanging on over here. You know what I mean? Like we're in survival mode. So it's more a matter of like, how can I serve my team today? How can I love on people? How can we share the load? Who needs help? Who needs to hand something off? Like that's really been the goal, is honestly like surviving this and making sure our kids are okay as we get through this. And so I think it's probably different than a team that has people who real estate's maybe a sole focus or they're not juggling a bunch of stuff at home, but it's like it's just been so much, the virtual learning, the kids being home all the time, and all the additional stress that's putting on top of real estate. There's no easy deal right now. Like no deal is easy. Every deal has a problem embedded in it. And it's like you don't know which problem you're going to get. Appraisal problem, lender's terrible. In Wilmington, we have hurricanes. We had a tree fall through a roof of a house that was supposed to close the next day. I mean,
Wow.
that stuff is a nightmare, right? So it's like, we have to tell our clients, like, hey, it's going to be turbulent. This is a bumpy ride. We will be here with you. We'll provide snacks and we will land this thing. But I don't know what bump we're going to hit. I just can't anticipate what your thing is going to be. Like, we have buyers who don't want to pay due diligence fees. And in North Carolina, that's just like almost impossible, right? So that's like making their experience of purchasing very bumpy. It's like, I can't anticipate what people are going to come up with. It's like the craziest stuff is just popping up, and we're just trying to do our best with it and just kind of set reasonable expectations. So it's a really long answer to say we're not setting goals in the traditional sense. We have numbers we're trying to hit with GCI, number of deals and all that, but I'm much more concerned, like, are my agents happy, healthy, supported, positive? Are we going to get through this? And so that's been really helpful. I have hired a coach. I've had a real estate coach in the past. I've hired another one who's local and who's a woman. So I've never had a local coach because I've always done somebody through a big organization, like one of the coaching companies. And I've never had a woman who's a mom be a coach. And so it's just been so helpful to be able to say to her, here's how much time I need to be at home with my son, Oliver, to help manage all that he's doing. Here's how much time I have in real estate. How do we use it strategically? And here's how many hours I think I need of self-care a week to maintain the level of caregiving that I'm having to do at home. And so it's just been great. And I'm really looking forward to that. So for me, she and I are working on goals that she can help me with, that also she can benchmark, because she works with multiple teams. I think that's important for the folks who are listening to understand, is like, pulling goals, if you're going to really shoot for goals and work hard towards them, they need to be benchmarked. They need to have some relevance to you. So somebody who has access, a consultant, a coach, a friend who has a brokerage, who has many high performing teams, could help you with this, so that you're picking something that's actually like fairly realistic and is not going to completely burn you out, because this market is just so demanding. It's never been like this. Our clients like get up at 3 a.m. and they go to the bathroom to pee, and they're texting us like, I need to see this house at 6 a.m. I mean, it's crazy. Like, the buyer in America right now who's looking in certain price points, you almost have to be obsessed to get the house. But if you're an agent, you have multiple people in this place psychologically that you're trying to sort of manage. So it's a lot.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned psychologically too, because listening to you speak and hear you talk about your coach, it almost seems like you were made for this moment, like your social work background, and that you're that coach for so many people, and you're providing that relief, and you're celebrating their birthdays. And so I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more about what your agents need from you now, or things that you've done, whether it's new technology or it's really the celebrating those birthdays and other ways to care for them, that you as a leader have really focused on this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's such an individual thing, like, and I'll say that this, and I feel so strongly about this, people feel loved in the details. So I can't give a blanket statement for somebody, like, you can't do something for 50 agents that's going to across the board make all of them feel really special or celebrated or cared for, whatever you're trying to achieve, right? I have this thing that we created called, we call it Deets on Peeps, but it's basically like the details. And it's like, what's your favorite candy bar? What is your coffee shop order? Where would you go to celebrate a good dinner? How do you like to celebrate? Like, it's just got all kinds of crazy questions. Like, what would be your theme song in life? What's your spirit animal? All this is programmed in my phone. So if I'm at like Target and there's, I don't know, like a panda bear, something that looks silly. Like, I know Janet loves panda bears, or I know that, some of our agents are like sensitive to dairy. So if we're going to bring in food, like knowing the details about people, I think is so important. And so it helps me celebrate them. Like, if I want to give them a gift card, I'm not just guessing. I asked them 4 years ago and I know what their favorite restaurant is. So I think caring for people in the details, we have created this worksheet. I'm happy to send it to you guys if you have a way for people to get it. That people have shared with really massive organizations and tweak it to whatever makes sense for you. You know, it's like I sent this to a construction company. They have like 500 employees and they were like, we had to get rid of the favorite flower part. And I was like, hey, don't discount that the guys might really like some sunflowers from time to time, but they put like favorite beer or like they got more specific on some different kinds of things. Um, favorite hobbies and different ways to support people. So I think that's key. Obviously, in this market and in any market, if you have people on your team, you need to feed them good quality leads. Like that's part of why they're on a team. And you want to create a bubble where there are growth opportunities. Like your team is a bubble and you're trying to create opportunities within that for people to continue to grow so that you can keep really high performing agents. And so I'm actually, after this, going to start the first one-on-one. So I have a one-on-one with each agent, not about like their goals for next year, where are they on track, but like, what are your dreams for life? Where do you want to go? How can we support you as I'm designing and developing what 2021 I think will look like? But just finding out, like, so Lisa Saley, who's one of our agents, she's always wanted to have a Christian counseling degree. That's been a dream in her life. And so she started an online class this semester and she's loving it. And so we want real estate should be a vehicle for people to have flexibility, to have income, but also to pursue things that people in maybe a 9 to 5 can't do. And I think that's part of leadership too. It's like, what are you passionate about? What makes you come alive? Like you can keep selling real estate and start a foundation for something that you're passionate about. Or maybe the most important thing to you is selling a lot of houses so you can know that your child's college education is taken care of. Like just understanding what makes people tick is really key. And so I just, and that's true in any relationship. Like when somebody knows your coffee order and they bring it to you right, that's just huge, you know? And so I think it's the simple little things like that that make a huge difference. And I spend a lot of time and resources on that for my team. Actually, in my home, my son has 5 caregivers that work for us, so I'm doing it for them too. I've got like all these deets on Peep spreadsheets, so I'm like, oh, so and so, like I have multiple people in my life like peanut butter, so I get peanut butter, and then I know where it's going, and it's like crazy what a little bag of Reese's cups can do for somebody. Like you don't have to do elaborate, crazy stuff. It can just be little thoughtful moments. It can be a handwritten note. It can just be a post-it note that says you rock or some crazy like line from a song that will be funny to this person because you've talked about something. So I think leadership is about knowing your strengths and then leaning into them. So this kind of like thoughtfulness, gift giving is like my love language. I love gifts and generally they're not big, they're just meaningful. And so I've just leaned into that. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of things that like I could grow in, but it's like, if you know your gifting as a leader, and maybe it's you're a great listener, or maybe it's you're great with the finances or whatever. And so you can sit down with your team and help them map that out, but knowing where you're gifted and then just lean into it, it's huge. And that's what I always say, like, this is kind of skipping topics, but you'll see how it's related. Is like, if you're good at public speaking, you're already 95% of the population never wants to do it. So you're only in a 5% portion. Now, if you have some natural talent or predisposition to it, then you get coaching or help. Actually, it's not crowded there. Like so often I think people think like, oh, I don't know if I should throw myself into it. It's like, no, I mean, some of these things in life, it's not super crowded. And I feel like no one's ever said to their boss, like, you're encouraging me too much. Like, stop with all this encouragement and inspiration. Like, I feel too loved. You got to back it off. Like, you almost can't overdo this, especially right now for people. And so it's like, lean into these things, especially if it already comes naturally to you and it's something other people struggle to do. That's special about you. And you should try to figure out how to bring that into your life.
I love that. Finding your niche, finding your strengths, but also like clearly just listening to you. I mean, you're an amazing speaker, very, very confident in all this. And maybe someone watching might think like, wow, Stephanie probably never sleeps. And so I'm curious if you can talk about, because you are involved in a lot of other organizations. There's the Inspiration Lab, there's your networks, associations, other things. And so can you talk a little bit about the value of other things outside of real estate? You've touched on it a little bit, but talk about that, why you started the Inspiration Lab and how you kind of balance your different, sort of career interests, if you think about it that way.
Yeah, lots of questions embedded in that question, but I'll start with the first one, which is I sleep a lot. So I'm like really, really a sleep nerd. I've read a lot of books about sleep. Um, if you're not sleeping well, it's the easiest, freest, fastest thing you could possibly do for self-care. Truly. It's connected to weight gain. It's connected to your moods and how well you're responding to, if you're in real estate, a completely stressful job. Like this job is relentless. And so being able to fall asleep, stay asleep, wake up rested, not yawn all the time, not constantly just be like caffeine, blurry eyed going through things. I mean, that really should be a goal. I'm always talking about hydration because like we're in America, like we should be hydrated. Like dehydration also is like related to so many like easy fixes. So I feel like when people talk about self-care, it's like they want it to be bonbons and pedicures. It's like, no, a great night's sleep is going to do more for you than all that put together. You know, it's like the basic fundamental building blocks. But I do sleep well. It's always been a huge gift. I'm thankful. I did not realize like how many people struggle with sleep. And so I just am so grateful for that. And it's the number one tool in my toolbox to keep going at the pace that I go because I have a ton of energy. And I'm always saying that like you can use your energy to make up for a time deficit. So yes, we all have 24 hours of time, but like I have a son with really demanding special needs. So I need to get the work done of a team leader who maybe has 40 or 50 hours a week in 20 to 30 so I can take care of Oliver. But if I come to work energetic, focused, on task with a great team where we're working together, we can get that done in maybe 15 hours. It's like if you go to work and you're exhausted all the time and your energy is low, it doesn't matter how much time you have. So there's so much focus on time management. I'm like, let's focus on your energy. If you have high energy, time almost becomes, it's not irrelevant in my life, but I have time for everything I need to have time for because it's not taking me so much longer. I also love to like, we send things out the door when they're not perfect. Like we ship it, you know, it's like that Seth Godin idea. Like you just got to get going with it. I mean, if there's some terrible grammatical error, please fix it. But like for the most part, you could tinker on a Canva graphic for 3 hours, or you could just get it out there, or you could like reshoot a video of yourself in a house 12 times, or you could just put the video out there because a video is better than no videos. So that is also like when people say you get so much done, it's partially because I'm not over here just like freaking out that it's perfect. I mean, we are always saying in the office, like, it's good enough. It's good enough. Like, get it out the door. And that's how we've been prolific in the stuff we're creating, like the content, you know. What other questions were embedded in your question?
Talking about other interests outside of being your team leader, Inspiration Lab,
Yeah.
association, other just how it feels you.
Yeah, well, I think so. There's this book, The Artist Way, that I love so much. And I would recommend, because one of the questions you had sent me before was like about innovation, creativity. It's such a great book. It's written for people who are creatives who are blocked, but I mean, everybody's a blocked creative basically, because you never see a 5-year-old saying like, oh, I really just wish I could figure out what I want to draw now, or, you know, like I don't know what I should build with these Legos. Like they just play, they just create. There's no block yet. They're not thinking I'm bad at Legos or I'm a terrible artist. They're just doing stuff. And relearning how to tap into that sort of playful side of yourself is so, so important because that's where creativity and innovation comes from. Um, and for me, you know, I love to read books. I like business books. I'm always saying like I need more hobbies because I always get this question. I'm like, I don't know. I really like to buy items for my we have a bonsai tree and I like to buy like miniature items. I'm like, is this a hobby? Like buying tiny gnomes and fairy mailboxes? I don't know. Um, but we love having people over to our back deck, even during COVID. Like we have the grandparents over once a week. Like I just everything that I feel like I like to spend time on is somehow like connected to people or taking care of them or helping them feel loved. Other than reading and then walking on the beach. Like we live at the beach and I'm 38 years old and I just now started going to watch the sunrise at the beach. Like what is wrong with me? This is crazy. Like I'm 8 minutes from my door to my toes in the sand. And it is the most beautiful thing. Like you cannot stand there and not just want to open your arms up and feel the sun on your face. It just does something for you. I mean, I think mountains, same thing, a beautiful lake. Anytime you can get out in nature, it's so, so important. And I think that's part of being mindful, which is part of this whole thing that we're talking about. And mindfulness also brings perspective, you know, in lots of ways. And it helps you when you're in nature connect the dots. There's a book, in addition to the book I just mentioned, and I can email these links to you because when I'm listening to a podcast, I'm always like running off the road, like, what did they say? What's that book? I'll send it to you.
Yeah, we'll
The
post
other,
them all.
yeah, the other book is Stillness is the Key. Ryan Holiday came out with that. It's a very popular book right now, but it talks a lot about trying to be still, to quiet things down, which is really hard in real estate, but also going for walks and being out in nature and like literally walking an idea out until you can get it to sort of gel. So those are all things that I feel like are really fun to do. And then the Inspiration Lab came from, I was going to so many real estate conferences in particular, and I was beginning to get to speak, which was really exciting. But I was always asking about like work-life balance or rhythm or integration or like, how does this work? Because real estate, if you want to work constantly, you can, you just can, because it's just the way it's created. The industry is just a really And now with COVID, even more so than it was before, because you really can lose clients if you don't respond quickly. It's just sort of how it works. So I was getting all this advice from, like, generally speaking, like 50-year-old white men who had like a stay-at-home wife and their kids were in college. And I was like, this is like an apple and an orange. Like, I'm so glad that you're golfing, or, your wife has food on the table and you turn your phone off for an hour and you have a nice glass of wine and put on like classical music. I'm over here like changing diapers, dealing with phone calls, trying to trade off from Oliver's worker, make sure I know where he is with everything so I can fill in the gaps. I mean, I was just like, this is not that would not work for me. And I thought, what if we got women together and ask what they're doing? And no men were in the room. And it was just really this opportunity to talk about personal and professional together. Because at real estate conferences, everybody's always talking about like, everything's so great. It appears like everything is so great on stage. It's like, this person sold 1,000 houses and this person, well, but if you know these people, often behind the scenes, like their life's kind of a wreck. And so I was like, how can we get these conversations? And then also for women, like fertility issues, nobody's talking about that, but it's rampant in our industry because it's like, and so many women have been told you need to take a break because your body is so stressed out, it can't do what it needs to do. And these conversations were never happening. And I thought they need to happen. They need to happen in a safe place where we can be authentic and say like, yeah, it's been a crappy year. And yeah, maybe I've sold a lot of houses or not a lot, but it's not a sign of weakness to say what is really happening in your life. And so that kind of, you bring your whole self to work, you bring your whole self home. While we were trying to make some distinction was confusing to me. So I was like, let's just get women together and do that. So it started as a luncheon series. It was like a passion project for me. Then it turned into a side hustle because we kept selling out events and I couldn't figure out who the audience was. So I made it into a membership community, really just to figure out like who's coming, who are we serving, who are we speaking to? And then it kind of really grew into a full-fledged business over time. And so last year we did a conference with hundreds of women, like 300 women. We had a real estate day, which was really fun. And at the time, it was the only real estate conference. And still, if there just aren't very many women's only real estate conferences, and certainly nothing on the East Coast. And a lot of them are run through like a coaching company or some very specific kind of mindset. And I thought, hey, I'm part of an independent brokerage here. So I'm not going to this isn't like some brand thing. I'm going to bring the most incredible women I know from around the country. I told them like, I have no money to pay you. You'll have to get here on your own dime, but let's get together and do this on a big stage in a big scale. And it was just so cool. And I wanted to pinch myself 100 times. Like, I could not believe it. Like the caliber of women that came in, we had people coming in from Canada and the West Coast. And it was just really super cool. And it really comes down to like, I was fortunate enough to give a TEDx talk, and the whole title of the talk was Create the Things You Wish Existed. And I wished a women's conference that was not trying to sell you anything or like, sponsored by a brand that was really trying to recruit you, but like truly was just a place for women to come together and breathe and share and talk about the things they felt like they couldn't talk about. And it was really beautiful and it was so cool. So, I mean, that's sort of like my whole MO for life is create the things you wish existed, which is how I ended up with like a boutique brokerage and then the Inspiration Lab and kind of these like the Deets on Peeps worksheet. I was like, surely somebody has a questionnaire like this that I could find, but they didn't. So like everything that we've created, especially too with marketing, I'm like, if I can't find something, then I'm like, well, we'll just create it. Why not?
I love that. That's so inspiring. And I mean, for me personally, like a lot of the things that you went through there, prioritizing career, almost quitting my job after multiple pregnancy losses just because I couldn't face people. Like, I think we've all been through it or through something. And I like what you said earlier about sort of creating your table and just asking or just stepping up, because when you also approach things from a point of just being willing to talk about it and just express a little bit of vulnerability, it is amazing the number of people who come back saying, been there, done that, or let me help you with this. And so I love that. It's really, really great. So totally put in a plug for Inspiration Lab. So are you going to are you doing another event? Like, are you doing it virtually? Are you looking forward to 2021? Like what's going to happen next? You had this amazing event last year.
God, it was so fun. Yes. Well, so we're not doing a virtual event because I keep saying this, but like short of Oprah calling me and being like, do you want to hang out on Zoom? Like I am zoomed out, like I think it's kind of lost its luster a little bit. And especially with moms trying to now homeschool or have like around the country, people are doing all kinds of different things, but I just think that online is very hard to pull off. With the Inspirational Lab members, we're having really tiny Friendsgivings in people's backyards, kind of all around North Carolina. So hopefully that will go well. But I think in 2021, if it's safe and makes sense, I mean, you know, I have a person who has immune system issues, and like I'm highly sensitive to making sure that everything's safe. If 2021 is the year, we will absolutely blow it out of the water. And if it's not, we'll be in 2022. But whenever it's right to fly people in from around the country, you bet we'll do it. And we really have a lot of different ideas. Like, we hope to have like a hands-on workshop for Instagram. So there are a few people that like crush Instagram and real estate. Like, not only are they teaching, but then you're going to go out in downtown Wilmington and like try to take pictures and write captions and like learn what they're seeing and doing. So I envision whenever we get together, there's more workshopy stuff. And we'll probably also tie a public speaking workshop before or after it, because I'm so passionate about more women getting on more stages. And that's part of why we started the Inspiration Lab. I was like, well, there aren't enough opportunities for women to speak locally or nationally, frankly. So I was like, well, again, we'll just create a conference and see if people come. And people came, and it was great. And we were able to shine a light on 30 women from, you know, from all these different industries and all these different elements of real estate, like real estate law, commercial real estate, multifamily, retail. We kept most of the focus on residential, but kind of said, hey, but this is such a big industry and women have such a hand in it. Let's make sure that we're having a conversation. And it was just really cool. So I'm excited to see, you know, what will come of it. But it's going to be a while before we can really, I think, get together and do the kind of like, but I just can, in my head, I can already see like people running across the lobby and hugging each other and cheers and glasses. Like, I miss that so much. And I think it will make it all the sweeter. And I already have a list of the speakers that I want, and how we can make it even a better investment, because we understand that, like, if you're a woman and you get on a plane and you come to an event, all that you had to do to get there, the amount of like lunches, it's like a military operation, I think, to leave your house a lot of times. So I want to make sure when people invest that they're coming back with like enormous returns, both in a kind of physical, mental, spiritual connections. Like, make a connection, get a referral, of course, but like come and be filled up, because that's so many of the women that we see, they're just pouring from an empty cup, and you just can't do that but for so long. And so you know, I don't know, maybe we'll think of some creative way to get together, but just right now it doesn't quite feel like it's the time yet. So one of the things we are having our members do is write for our blog. So speaking is different. Public speaking is obviously very different than writing a blog, but it's a way to express your ideas. It's an opportunity for people to potentially notice you. And so we're really excited to do that. And so many women in real estate want to speak more, or they just don't want to be just a panelist. They want to do, you know, a solo talk or a presentation. And so kind of sharing all the stuff that I've learned about that and the opportunities, and then just trying to say, hey, and we have a stage. So, you know, it's just very empowering. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, if you're waiting to be asked to be on a stage, well, if you build your own stage, then you can stand up there all day long, and hopefully people come to listen to you. But
Yeah.
if they do, what an opportunity to shine a light on women who, so I mean, a lot of women in the industry just aren't known as well because they don't understand their own personal branding, or they've just been so head down focused that they haven't had an opportunity to teach or speak. But we need to hear and learn from them, you know?
Yeah. Or somebody's Googling them and getting somebody else in Georgia who isn't even
Exactly. Yes, they've not even, I mean, that's the thing. It's like in real estate, I think so often we don't pretend like we don't, like, you know, if somebody's going to hire you from across the country, have you done Google incognito searching of yourself to see what pops up, so that you understand what people's, you know, perception could be of you. And so I think teaching women all of that. And we're about to teach a class on or we just taught a class on awards and nominations. Like, winning awards, people say like it doesn't matter. No, it matters. It builds credibility, and you need a certain amount of them. Once you have a certain amount, it's fine, because people are like, oh, she knows what she's doing. But for me, that was part of my strategy early on in real estate. I was like, I need to get on some of these lists, win some awards locally, nationally, if possible, because when I go on a listing appointment, I can't say I have 20 years experience. But if I have these really relevant, easily understood places where a third party has said, yeah, Stephanie Lanier knows what she's doing, that builds credibility and value. And then when you're experienced in your career, it's less important. But like, that's another new person, easy thing. It's like, and also if you're under the age of 35, in most cases, like being a rising star, it's great because nobody expects you to have done like a body of work. You know, it's not some lifetime of achievement. It's like, hey, we see something in you that's really cool. And we want to support you. And so I just think that's another way that women can absolutely, right now during COVID, Write blogs, be a contributor, find a way to get your voice out there, but also go after opportunities for lists and awards and 40 under 40 and 30 under 30 and all the things, so that you have these opportunities that when live events come up, you're relevant and your name is in the mix.
That's great advice. So I'm curious, I know, since we're on yet another Zoom, I'm not going to keep you here all day, though this conversation has been really fun. One more question and then a fun question. So you've talked a lot about creating the table, creating the things you want to see, creating the stage. What do you wish the real estate industry as a whole would create next? What next thing do we need so badly, or do you wish we're here that isn't?
Somebody get rid of the keys. Why are we running actual physical keys all over the place? Like that drives me bananas. And physical checks. Like I still can't believe how much like driving around town. Like we have an intern and most of what she's doing is picking up a check, taking keys, earnest money, signing for the, I mean, it's actually still not that streamlined when it comes to these elements of real estate, taking a physical lockbox, picking the sign up, getting a directional from somebody who didn't want it in their yard. Like there's so many physical objects going to disparate places at different times that it eats up so much efficiency and time. And it's like you have to use human resources to do this, and it's just kind of crazy. We're beginning to see some wiring of funds, but the keys, I mean, 99% of people still have an actual key that goes into their front door. We're beginning to see like Ring doorbells and stuff like that, but it's just crazy to me. Like we're in 2020 and I'm still running around keys. I'm still going to Home Depot, standing there, just like having them cutting new keys. And I'm like, this is kind of bananas. So somebody please fix that. Like that would make everyone's life so much easier.
That's such a great point. I do feel like sometimes we're in this weird alternate universe where some things are so smart and so ahead, and then other things are like 100 years behind. And you're like, wait a second.
It's crazy. Like the algorithms and predictive analytics and some of the stuff happening on the marketing end and lead gen and all that stuff is like mind blowing. And I mean, the technology that some of these companies have created, fantastic, but there's so much like old school dinosaur stuff we're doing that I'm like, this is crazy. And it's probably because there's not money that like, I get it, like I don't know what the opportunity financially is. If I'm an investor, I'm starting up a company, but I just know from a convenience standpoint, it's like the changing from like being able to do electronic signature, game changer, right? If we took away some of this physical running around for checks and keys, for the most part, those kind of two things, it would buy back so much time.
I love it. Somebody out there, go create that table.
There's your big idea.
Awesome. So one last question, and then we'll say goodbye. Tell us something that most people don't know about you, something fun, or you've shared so much, so maybe something that most people do know, but something unrelated to real estate.
Well, I mean, the easiest, lowest hanging fruit is my birthday is Halloween. So that is kind of a fun thing that,
Happy almost birthday.
yeah, if you knew me, you would probably know that. But yeah, it's a great birthday. I think that it's such a like whimsical, fun, playful time. And so I look forward to it every year. And it's going to be a weird year. It's going to be a little different, but we're actually making Halloween buckets to take to all of our clients with kids so that they kind of have like a fun treat. We're just trying to make the most of it. So it'll be great.
I love that. Well, this has been wonderful. Stephanie Lanier, founder, entrepreneur, leader, inspiring person all around. Thank you for being part of our Female Founder series. I'm Rachel Allard with Union Street Media. Please join us next time. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. I didn't even have to ask half the questions. You already were kind of answering them and off and running. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fun to do this. And I hope it provides value. I'm going to send you, let's just not forget. So you need deets on Peeps.
Deets on Peeps. You mentioned a couple of books.
Yeah. The Stillness Is the Key and then The Artist's Way. I mean, I love business books, but these are things that like, that I think are just like so important for realtors right now, because I don't know that anybody needs to tell a realtor to like speed up. Like there's just, the hustle thing is like real broken right now for real estate agents. It's more like, hey, you got to survive this. And like you only have so much bandwidth. And so how do we manage that? But I'll send you all that stuff so that you have it. And I'll try to think if there's anything else, but I think women, the one thing we didn't really talk about, because it was like one of the things that you would tell yourself way back when, is just like this. I just feel so passionate about people thinking about self-care as strategic and not selfish, because there's just this whole culture, I think, of women feeling such guilt, et cetera. But I mean, real estate, it's like if you get cancer or you get sick, I mean, unless you've purchased long-term disability insurance, it's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not a salaried employee. There's not someone to really, all the cool things about real estate that make it so independent also make you really vulnerable if bad things happen in your life. And so
Mhm.
it's like, those are the kind of things too that we talk about at our conferences. Like, it's not sexy, but like, I really wish when I was early on, somebody had explained that to me, like, what are my options? Okay, now I'm making six figures. That's cool. But what if I get sick?
Yeah.
I mean, your local group might do a fundraiser, but that's not going to fix long term what you're facing.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Out of curiosity, have you ever heard of Allison Levine?
No.
She's a speaker. She's amazing. She was actually one of the first climbers. She was part of the first all female climbing group to attempt to summit Everest. And then eventually she did summit. But she has an awesome book. I'll send you a copy. Um,
I
I'll
love that.
email you, send me your address and I'll send you a copy. But she's great. She's like this 4'10" tiny woman who actually has a condition where she actually her body can't carry as much oxygen. And so she is one of those like against all odds, like has done amazing things. And she wrote a book called On the Edge, which is her leadership lessons from Mount Everest and just general climbs. And she talks about surrounding yourself with people who have really big egos and actually bucking, doing a lot of things backwards of how a lot of people say, because when you're on a climbing team, you want the best climbers around you. You want people thinking that they are the best and being invested in making themselves even better than the best that they already are. And so she's really great. I'll send you a copy. I think she totally would resonate with some of the things
I
she
would love that. Yeah. I'm like, oh, see, this dinging didn't happen. It was like a miracle. I don't know why.
said. Now it's happening.
It's like one of the things I'm like, I'll do this but then I'm like always in the office and it doesn't matter. But thank you so much for the opportunity. And when you send it out, whenever this goes live, will you let me know and we'll put it out on our channels too?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're a couple of weeks behind just because we have so many and we're putting them through post production. So it'll probably be a couple weeks, but I will definitely let you know.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.